Our 3 p.m. Mainframe Theater session is with Jeff Henry, VP Product Management. Jeff, if you want to come on up. He's going to be talking about infrastructure, performance management, and some of the latest stuff going on in mainframe and infrastructure. Hey, Jeff.
Great, thank you very much. So before I get started, I just wanted to reach out and say one of the things I'm trying to do with these sessions is establish more of a partnership for us to follow up on. And the reason I say that is when I'm looking at our mainframe audience, it's much more of a confined audience. It's not like I'm shipping volumes of boxes and software on boxes like more of a Microsoft model. So we're trying to get tighter in our design thinking and working with you all on where we should be investing next. So when you think of the agile development cycle, it's much more about the, once I start building stuff, how do I make sure that the stuff makes sense, get you in on a Scrum team, et cetera. I'm talking about way back and before that. So one of the areas that I'd like your partnership with as we move forward is just how do we bounce around some of these ideas, get them down into solutions and prototypes, then get them down into, okay, what are the investments that we're going to make together in an iterative fashion to grow upon, instead of what you've seen sometimes in the past. We think we have a really good idea, we've done all that analysis inside, we over-architect the hell out of it, we ship something in 18 months, and then it didn't quite hit the mark. Trying to get much more into a more iterative cycle, collaborative with you, since we have the ability to do that with this type of an audience. So I say that as an opening here, mostly because my Twitter feed is on there. I'll certainly share my email address as well. I want to get down into how we actually work with each other moving forward. So if this connects with anybody and you want to follow up with me afterwards, Twitter, LinkedIn, email, happy to actually have the partnership. So with that as the preamble, let's jump into it. So hopefully you've read the abstract and that's why you're here, or you've read the abstract and that's why you watch this as a replay. But I'm the VP of Product Management for a portion of our mainframe products. And that portion is very much focused at the infrastructure. It's around automation, performance and systems management, storage, and then some of our common services we use across the board, like MSM. So I work very closely with peers and other business units, and some of the things we're going to go into today is specifically what some of those other areas are. Because we do not want the mainframe to be viewed as a siloed platform. I don't think it's good for you, and I don't think it's good for us. We want the mainframe to be used in more and more activity, from the mobile to the mainframe situations, from some of the analytics we're doing, and then how we make it easier for you to manage those environments from a cross-platform and cross-discipline way, where some people still have an investment in unique mainframe areas or departments and unique distributed departments. Make sure that that collaboration continues to improve and get better and better. So I'm going to go through some examples there as well. Before we get started, let's step back and look at the market a little bit. So you've probably heard this all day long. Certainly, a lot of the key messages I saw in the keynote this morning. There's just this proliferation of devices and an overwhelming amount of data. So that could be good and bad. It shows great innovation, but it also is overwhelming. How do you manage it? How do you handle it all? How do you get smarter? How do we as vendors provide you tools and capabilities that's smarter? So when I think about the proliferation of devices, I mean, from a cell phone standpoint, there's 40 trillion mobile transactions a day. And when I fast forward ahead, we're looking at 4.5 billion devices by 2016. That's astronomical compared to looking backwards at the number of computers or the number of web connections. I mean, as people can take it anywhere they go, and that's just the smartphone. When you start thinking about wearable devices, some of the examples in the keynote this morning around some of the connected cars, some of the activity from sensors and actuators, some of the what we can do from an Internet of Things devices, it's just growing exponentially. When you look at that then from a data standpoint, those 200 billion connections by the end of the decade have to connect somewhere when they actually want to do a transaction. Often that connection is back to your mainframe data. Not always. Some of those systems of engagement type applications are much more just that. It's just engagement. There's nothing that really has to go back, and that's a good thing. It gets people connected, It makes them understand what activity that you can give them, because sometimes when you get that transaction happening, all of a sudden there's a bigger and bigger potential drain on your back-end resources without a lot of new value. Sometimes it's just a different way of doing business the way they did it before, but now it's a higher drain. So how do you balance those things? Through things like analytics, through things like virtualization, like cloud deployment models, et cetera. And we'll get into some of that. Right now, when I look at those connections to the back end, 71% of the data that those applications are using reside on the mainframe, which is a staggering amount when you look at all the hype around like mobile devices. Over 30% of those are actually distributed applications connecting directly to the mainframe today. So all the data sits there, and at least 30% of those systems of engagement, those mobile applications, are connecting back to it. Well, when you look at some of our bigger mainframe segments, like finance, like insurance, that number goes a lot higher. So 30 is pretty impressive, but as you get into some of those unique segments, we see more and more of the systems of engagement wanting to do something. Don't just engage me, don't just show off some pretty capabilities, pretty front ends, but allow me to do real business. And we're entering that next stage where we have to be pretty innovative on how to handle it, so we're not overwhelmed. So when I look at the data again, spin it another way, another study, 81% of the mainframe is strategic to the current and future IT plans. So in the past, people have kind of put the mainframe off and called it more legacy. Now you're seeing, as these transactions become more available in the age of the customer and everything about the SLA, that's becoming a bigger deal. When you look at cloud deployment models, well, what server do you want to use? Well, mainframe's a pretty powerful server. There's a lot of things that you can do in a private and a hybrid cloud environment, whether the public cloud environments use it or not, which we're also seeing interest in. And then 48% are actually being delivered as new applications. So it's new business applications that are engaging those mainframe systems of record. So this is a very strategic platform moving forward. I'm probably not telling you anything new, that's why you're actually here. But it's one that we're seeing more and more growth from the hardware, and now more and more growth of the software, but the need for us to be able to help make it smarter and simpler to use so that the tribal knowledge isn't a problem in actually keeping active staff on site to be able to actually deal with the management, the monitoring, the infrastructure. So that's where a lot of our focus is, a lot of our investment. Another study we did was, how is the market changing? How's the market evolving? In the past, there were pretty distributed or distinct silos of, these are the people that manage the mainframe, these are the people that manage distributed. They don't want to work and play together, they don't use the same tools, and there was just a very different approach. What we're now seeing is over 50% have responsibility of both. And when you bring those platforms together, that should be a powerful thing. That should be a good thing for your business, not the, oh my God, now we got to deal with 20 different tools instead of 10 on each side. Now, we as vendors have to help you with that. And so far, we've been throwing more and more tools out at you. So I want to talk about some of the things we're doing to try to help that as well. Only 15% from these studies actually are looking at mainframes as a siloed approach. So obviously a trend that we want to take advantage of, but also a trend that we want to make sure that we hit on the right investment areas first to help you through this, through this evolution. So we've been poking a little fun at ourselves, but through some of the cartoons that we've used in some of our marketing campaigns. And in this particular one, it's like, not another tool. Please, not another tool. And that's pretty easy. But I will tell you, as we got into some of the analytics plays, and some of you were at my previous session, when we got into analytics, we were doing just that. We were looking at, hey, here's a tool that we can use to help you with forensics data. And we stepped back after hearing from quite a few of you, so thank you for those that participated with us, and said, first, we need to provide value in the tools you've already invested in with us. So some of the things you'll see at the demos and in our incubation pods are what we've prototyped to bring out through SysView first, where we think we can go with Vantage, what we have on trial through some of the DB2 tools. So focusing on delivering value through your current investments first, learning from you in the market, and then expanding on where it makes sense. So that's how we've tried to pivot to stay away from this continuing to exacerbate the problem. Other studies we've taken to see, what is it that we're hearing keeps you up at night? Well, one, and you heard this through all of the keynotes this morning, is there's a moving at the speed of business. The innovation is just outstanding right now, and we need to take advantage of it. We can't be afraid of it. We need to leverage it for our competitive differentiation. But how do you keep up with that overwhelming number of devices, with that overwhelming amount of data? We need to be able to help the system become more of the expert instead of it relying upon your SMEs solely. And we'll get into a couple of the things that we're doing there as well. When I look at the barriers to entry, data, mainframe data, we would need to keep it secure. The whole reason we've been housing it on the mainframe and not letting it off is because we feel more comfortable with the data security there. There are plenty of other sessions that talk about what more we need to do just with the mainframe, but things as simple as, should we take our investments around our API management code and some of the other areas and bring that to the mainframe as well to help tie it into our security backends? I don't know. Is it a big enough opportunity? Is it good enough with just leveraging on the distributed systems? Again, areas where I would love your feedback. So when we step back and look at the systems of engagement, tying back to the systems of record, we're missing a big component here. Yes, we have a proliferation of devices out there. And yes, there are unique needs that are being handled from the application server that we have to think of in a different way than we did just with the web. And the fact that you can walk around anywhere with this instead of it mostly being in an office or in a home certainly provides or brings different challenges. The back end, how we manage some of those things the whole way in the security we talked about, that's bringing a lot of change as well. But this middle part both brings a tremendous amount of change, but a tremendous amount of opportunity as well. Cloud deployment models, being able to leverage a hybrid deployment model so that you can spin up and get extra capacity as needed. Being able to step back and take a more API-first approach to your architecture, as well as what we're trying to do from our architecture, so it's extendable. So everything doesn't have to be tightly integrated, but we can loosely couple it with open APIs so that we can iteratively develop and deliver more quickly, as well as allowing us to partner with you as our customers, but also other third-party vendors to be able to bring solutions that actually work and play well together instead of a lot of the proprietary tools we've done in the past. So those bring a lot of opportunities, and just looking at that systems of operation, I think some of the IBM guys have been talking about it as systems of insight. Either one works. It provides a tremendous amount of value to us if we can look at how the mainframe and the distributed platforms work together as one instead of continue to keep them as siloed approaches. If we keep them as siloed approaches, you don't get anywhere in this middle. You just get confusion. So another thing that hopefully you've heard about and you will continue to hear about consistently from us, so how are we investing? How are we breaking down what we're hearing from you to invest in? And we basically have three key areas that blend together intentionally. So first is that application level. So what are we doing around things like DevOps and some of our tools, linking to our other business units and what we're doing with Agile and the Rally acquisition, et cetera, to go the whole way from the mobile to the mainframe. You're building a mobile application. How do you leverage that mainframe data? Right out of the box. What are the APIs that you can use to get to some of that mainframe application? And then the data, in order to get to it, you need to make it secure. In order to make it secure, we need to actually be able to audit ourselves against it. How do you look at that in a more intelligent way, leveraging some of the analytics capabilities? And then the infrastructure itself. Move from the monitoring and management into how do you automate some of the easy stuff to get it out of the way? So one of the examples I used earlier, and I was part of with the Bluemix Focus and IBM and their work with Netflix, is Netflix in their as-a-service environment would just continuously run what they call chaos monkeys, killing things, just to prove to themselves that high availability and redundancy is key. And anything that looks sick gets killed because they don't want it to come down and cause something worse. Now, obviously, streaming a video is a little bit different risk than a financial transaction between two businesses. So I'm not trying to say we go the whole way there, but there are some easy things that we can do. There are some easy things, around some of the analytics that we're investing in to say, if a Kix transaction is sick, or a Kix region is sick, and you have 15 of them up, well, you've invested in high availability. We've invested in high availability. You've invested in redundancy. Kill it before it does any more damage and spin it back up. If you only have 3, maybe that's not the smart thing to do. So what we're looking for through this partnership and through the feedback is what are some of those easy ones to be able to get out of the way? Because we would like to tie more to automation, but also want to make sure that you're comfortable with the system. We can give you recommendations before we jump the whole way to automation. When I break those 3 things down, those applications, data, and infrastructure, it's pretty easy to map them against the systems of engagement and the systems of record. But it's how all this stuff works together, how we actually tie the threads together that will really differentiate both us, but then how you're rolling this out and allowing the system or demanding the system be more intelligent and provide more insight to action. This is one of the areas that I would love it if everything on here, everything that you're actually investing in was a CA product. But I know that's not reality. So how do we take a more API-first approach? How do we work with more open collaboration systems? So one of the other announcements that David talked about today was our work with IBM and others around Open Linux. So how do we help drive some of those environments to make it a more open environment overall? I would love to do the same thing around some of the analytics work. I would love to do the same thing around some of the management activities. So for the next couple of slides, for the rest of this call, I'm going to drill in now into some of our investments around infrastructure. So that was all what we're doing across the mainframe group. Now I'm going to drill into infrastructure, but I'm going to go beyond mainframe into how we're working with our distributed brethren and some of the business units around here as well. So back to a couple of cartoons. Got to keep it fun. So this isn't what I think you're really talking about with a 360 view. So we need to be able to look across those platforms and give you a single pane of glass and a view. But I don't want to deliver that through this big monolithic UI. I want to do it widget-based approach, open API approach. If you have our products, they work better and integrate better together. If you don't have our products, that's not a showstopper. So 32% of you have told us that you're dissatisfied with your current end-to-end monitoring capabilities. That doesn't even go into what we need to do proactively from a management and from an analytical smarts. That's just being able to monitor it. 76% of you say that you have multiple products. I actually would have thought that was even higher. I don't think anybody I know doesn't have multiple products actually working in this space. With 62% of the shared visibility. So one of the things that I was invested in a lot at IBM that I've brought over and why I'm asking for this partnership is much more around design thinking. So it's not about product managers working with their engineers and go figuring out what the next features and functions in the releases are. It's working with you to understand what's the design and our investment prioritization before we get started. Well, often that's a very persona-based approach. So we can make Bob, the system programmer, very happy and use, when Bob leverages 3 tools, you can make it more consistent. But then how Bob works with Alice, works with Jim, works with Joe, works with when they're on a bridge call, all hell breaks loose. So we've taken a different approach to that. We're saying let's focus on the team persona and let's pick some of these chaos type situations and let's try to invest in making that team more collaborative, make that team more effective. So that's a lot of the investments we've got on that going forward, which plays into this one. Often what we hear from our customers is once an issue happens, all hell breaks loose, everybody jumps on a bridge call and they're on it for 5+ hours. Now in this case, the cartoon only allowed us to really have space for 4 people, and they're actually sitting around a desk. At least all the ones I've been pulled into from a crit sit situation, there's a hell of a lot more people on the phone than this. I mean, we're looking at 50 to 70 people over 5 hours. That ends up adding up to a lot of cost. So anything that we can do to make that a more collaborative feature, anything we can do to remove that issue before it actually gets there by understanding some of the changes against a normal activity, the better off we'll all be. So that's a lot of focus. That's where we're trying to focus, to bring the value back to the collaboration between people and the collaboration between tools. So we've done a lot of customer studies, and we've come back and validated with quite a few of you. Thank you if you are the ones that participated in many of these validation efforts, to say, okay, let's get down to the next level of detail around these 3 key areas. And we mapped out value drivers to understand what's really your focus. And then we've taken a look at our technology and said, so what are the common places that we have to invest to make sure that we're really delivering on our roadmaps? And the 3 that have come to, that have surfaced there are how to secure the data in the service enablement, how to drive that business continuity and high availability, and how to continue to focus on the total cost of ownership. Because we know cost, especially in this environment, continues to come up over and over again. So in the roadmaps that hopefully you've already seen, and the ones that you'll see through the rest of today and tomorrow, these 3 themes will continue to come up as investment areas for us. And you should see this repetitively as we come out with the next version of our releases and the next version of our investments. All right, so let's talk about specifically some of the performance management areas in the portfolio vision. So there's 2 key areas that we're focused on here. You'll see a lot of different products up here. Goes back to that first cartoon of we've thrown a lot of products, a lot of tools at you. So what are we doing about it? How are we bringing these together? How are our investments synchronizing? So in the first case, we're looking at our mainframe products. How do we bring an integrated mainframe management console, again, a modularized API-driven console, to be able to cross these mainframe products so that the individuals that have been driving their SME value, their personas, can work and play better together and collaborate and share some of that data when obviously there are times when storage impacts performance, databases impact the systems, and all of which can impact the application. Second area of focus is how do we bring the cross-platform aspects together? So some of the areas that you see on the show floor here are what we're doing with cross-Enterprise Apm to bring our APM solution, the Wiley acquisition, together with some of your mainframe investments. And then the UIM for Z. So once we look at that application transaction from end to end, from mobile to mainframe, how do we complement that with a view on the health of your infrastructure? So those are the 2 big areas of focus of how do we bring these things together for a team-based persona approach instead of giving you the next features and function in any individual product. And I own these now. These are the ones that I'm focused on what the next prioritization is, so hold me accountable to that. If you see us going off the rails and not bringing these things together, I want to know about it. So let's talk specifically about what we've got with cross-Enterprise APM. So we're looking for that user experience, so the mobile, the whole way back through the application server and the network, looking at the transaction across the board so that you can quickly pinpoint the causes and the issues and mean time to resolution. That's reactive. It's a good first step. It allows us to blend these things with some commonality. But the next step we're working on there are areas of investment that APM version 10 just brought to market. So 3 key areas. One is this dynamic topologies view. So from a graphical standpoint, it doesn't matter whether it's a distributed device or a mainframe device. Let's bring it together dynamically in a topology so that you can look at where things are failing and the relationships between. So in an analytics presentation that I did earlier off the floor, a prototype that we're showing over here was how do I bring information from a mainframe standpoint from netmaster, TCP information, from sysview, from sysview for DB2 or Insight or however we're actually bringing that forward now, and blend it together into one topology so you don't have to go look in all those individual screens as a starting point. All right, so that's one of the areas for APM investment moving forward. Another one is around timelines. So how do we start being able to look at a timeline both historically and a timeline historically and then build it as we move forward to see when change happens? so that when you see something change, you can drill in on that timeline and say, okay, what changed? And you can drill in and actually leverage access to other tools. So some of the integrations that we're looking at across the mainframe portfolio are like a linkage to mainframe application tuner. I know an application just changed. What happened? How do I actually get that back into the test environment to make sure that we fix whatever went wrong there? How do I see how these things are interrelated? And then the third one is something that the APM guys have brought out around differential analytics. And it's basically just saying, I know static thresholds create a lot of false positives. In order to remove some of the noise, in order for the system to become smarter, how about we understand what normal is? And we build what we call a green or a blue highway of what normal is. And what normal is for CPU usage on a weekend is probably different than what it is on the peak loads. So build dynamic thresholds off of that and allow you to get what they call blue alerts to say, I don't know whether you trust this yet or not, but if you do, let's go ahead and automate off of it. Let's go ahead and make them a real alert. So those are 3 areas of continued investment that we're working on with APM that you'll see blended. We don't care what platform it is. That you'll start seeing through our mainframe products as well. Again, there's prototypes of them at the innovation pod, and would love your feedback. Another area of investment has been UIM for Z. So we've got a demo of this over here, one of the announcements from this week, and it's really just, okay, you've seen the flow from an application level. What's the health of the infrastructure underneath? It's not all tied to an application. There's more than one lens to look at this through. How do we make sure they're complementary? So tying back to the same level of investments, one of the things we're working with the UIM for Z guys on is where do we take that same differential analytics approach? And instead of just looking at reactive mean time to resolution, how do we start looking at some of the pattern matching that we see from history and be able to project that forward so that we can start measuring predictive time to action, so that we can get ahead of the game. Some algorithms will work across platform. Other algorithms we're learning are unique to the data you've got on the mainframe. So we're continuing to work with our data sciences team to make sure that we understand where it needs to be unique, but we also understand where it needs to be complementary. So the investment around UIM for Z falls into a probe type of technology, a probe type of framework. And the 3 that we've invested in that we have for you are a probe focused on the operations, so the LPARs, the Z-series instances, et cetera. A probe focused on storage, so how we tie into DASD and fiber channel ports, et cetera. And then what we've got over from a ZVM. So a little bit different, which one of these is not like the others, but that's how we've tried to cover the gamut from a mainframe portfolio. And those are the ones that are available today, announced, and you can get more information on the demo there as well. Performance analytics, I kind of talked about this already as we actually talked about the investments we're making and the linkages we're making with the APM teams and the UIM teams. And we've kind of hit on the fact that we're trying to look for that historic norm to be able to map things back against. And also how we assist with, it's assisted triage is the term that the APM folks have been using. How we make it just quicker and easier for non-experts to get to some meaningful data to either be able to solve the problem on their own or at least collaborate with others in a similar format. There's a lot more places we can go with analytics. The problem is there's a lot more places we can go with analytics. We need to understand where you need us to, not just where we can. So this is one of those mantras I try to bring back to our team of, I don't want to build technology in search of a problem. I want to make sure I understand your problem. So we have prototypes, we have prototyping, we have projects going on that says, what can we do around performance management and bringing value to SysView? How can we extend that through, say, Netmaster? How do we bring that into storage? Because a lot of the things that we're doing with performance management and storage, dynamic thresholds, it's pretty similar. But then how do we also take it to things like security? So one of the pods in the, I don't know which one of these is security, is the CTO incubation work that they've been doing around analytics that from more of a forensic standpoint on how you can bring that into a security model, and the mainframe team and the security business unit are working together on that, because the use cases are pretty much the same. How you implement that, leveraging the ties and the investments you've made from security, is going to be a little bit different, but the use cases are pretty similar. So again, one of the areas over here that we're looking for feedback on. So transforming IT operations. The big piece of this is we no longer can get away with being an isolated mainframe and throwing you more and more tools. We need to bring this together in an interoperable and integrated way. That does not mean tight integration. That means loosely coupled integration with an API-first approach so that we can continuously bring these out from a modular format and link beyond the mainframe as well. So what you should see from us as we continue this investment path forward is an accelerated time to value where we've missed our mark. And we need to understand that. The earlier, the better. That's why we want this design thinking process to start early on instead of just in the agile scrums. Improve customer experience, and then promoting the integration of the mainframe with those other platforms. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate those that watch it later. I'm happy to take any questions off to the side while they prep for the other one. Thank you.